What is up, everybody? Today we're with the one and only Marisa Valenti. Marisa, she's not only a great friend, but you're somebody that I truly enjoy talking with because we are really nerdy about different conversations, different topics, and then by the time we realize we take a look at our clocks, it's been like 3-4 hours just talking. So, Marisa, tell us a little bit more about what you do and why you're talking with us today.
So I just finished PT school. I'm a big girl now, passed my boards, and I will be starting travel PT soon. So I'll be going to different states, different clinics, working in different environments, which is very beneficial, which kind of leads me into my biggest passion in my field, which is neuro. It is super applicable to every single aspect of what we do. Doesn't matter the patient. Understanding how the brain works, especially in conjunction with your body, is essential for proper treatment. And neuro is important not even just in PT, but as a group instructor, which is one of my passions and things to do in my free time. You can apply it to how you interact with your members, how you teach. So I'm here to enlighten you a little bit about how neuro can bring a lot of benefits to the table when discussing group fitness and teaching group fitness.
Yeah, and I think here to enlighten us all with it because we met through exercise. We went through group fitness. I remember in the beginning, you were somebody that will attend group fitness classes, and then as you found a passion for it, then you gravitated more towards teaching it. So just seeing the transformation from where I first met you to where you are now, and then almost coming full circle because you mentioned something quite interesting there, the neuroscience aspect of things go hand to hand with coaching so well. Will you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So as coaches, our goal is to help our members reach their goals. Right. Doesn't matter what that is, whether it's becoming stronger, if it's just shutting your mind off at the end of the day because you got off a 10-hour shift and you want those endorphins flowing. Our goal is to help you achieve that. And how do you achieve goals? You keep going. We want our members to keep coming to class because the more work you put in, the more reps you get in, that's how you're going to achieve your goals. So how do we get them coming to class? What would you say as a fitness instructor, some of the things that you do? I'm going to interview you now.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So my approach to teaching has changed quite a lot over the last 11 years because that's how long I've been teaching that, for 11 years. And I'll give you a little bit more context to this. So in the beginning, I started teaching from a place of, it was from a group place, but it was a lot more direct, meaning I try to help people by correcting them a lot. And if they weren't doing correctly, then they had to do it correctly because that's the way that it was supposed to. It will work sometimes. Most of the time it wouldn't, because we know there's people coming to the rooms for different reasons, and not everybody wants that. So as I started to get more experience and as I started to become more self-aware, which is something too that we talked about earlier, I started to reframe my approach to it. Whereas now I step in the room with my goal being helping people forgetting about exercise. Because if I can help them forget about exercise, and if I can provide an experience where they have a good time, then automatically the exercise happens and they don't even realize sometimes. So to answer your question, long story longer, that is my approach, and that's how I see the value in coaching, is to provide an environment where people feel comfortable and they can trust us so that we can help them to achieve XYZ goal that they might have in mind.
That is beautifully said. And we want our members coming back.
Right.
That's how they're going to achieve their goal. So question, how do we give them that comfortable environment? How do we make them feel welcome and forget the fact that it's just exercise? We teach. We want our members to learn and then perform. So there's a difference between the two. Learning is skill acquisition itself. So it's figuring out the nuts and bolts of things. For example, squat form, you don't want to raise your heels, sinking your hips back type of thing. And performance is taking that skill you've acquired and being able to do it in multiple settings. So whether that's in the studio, like in the group fitness studio, or out into the gym itself. If you can generalize it, you can perform. So how do people learn? The brain is crazy. So interesting. And there are 3 different stages to learning. The first is cognitive, the second is the associative phase, and the third is the autonomous phase. So the cognitive phase is kind of like what you were saying, how you first started teaching.
Right.
It is the, okay, do this, this, and this. It is teaching the basics. You want those cues to be short, sweet, concise. You don't want to overload your member with all of this crazy information. We just want them to get the feel and the basic technique down. Then you have the associative phase. So at this point, your member knows, okay, I know how to do a squat. I know how to do a bicep curl. Now we fine tune that. So they have a very good ability to detect errors, to correct those errors, and to focus on the little stuff that's going to make their technique and that action that much better. Stage 3 is the autonomous phase. So that's the I can do it without thinking about it. And once they get to that phase, they're going to feel really good about progressing, about taking those higher options, and feel really confident about coming back to class to achieve their goals. So that's just one little way of how neuroscience can get in there.
And the last stage that you mentioned earlier, some people refer to it as a state of flow.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody is able to perform a task without using that much bandwidth.
Right.
And that is the final stage
Mm-hmm.
of the learning process.
Yes.
And we were talking earlier about the 3 stages, and it was a very interesting conversation because some will argue that there is a pre-stage where people are not aware of anything prior to the start of the learning process, right? So it'd be more of the unconscious incompetence where they just don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Will you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that.
And when we take this into the context of, because we all experience this at some point. You told me like you're very excited about starting to perform what you learn, but there's an element inside your body that tells you, but I'm not as good as somebody that's been doing it for a while.
Right.
And people refer to it as imposter syndrome. I think we all do that to some capacity. Could you tell us a little bit more about that feeling, that knowing feeling that we all get?
So, and I think as a new grad PT, this is a perfect example. We went through 3 years of rigorous training, 2 years of classes, 1 year of clinicals, where we're in the clinic, we are doing hands-on, we are acting as a physical therapist. And despite all this knowledge we have and all of this experience, we come out of the other side with this fancy degree, but you feel like sometimes that you don't know anything. and you go in and you do. That's the thing. You're so much more capable, but then there's that mental element, there's that confidence element, especially when you look at your colleagues and they just know what to do right off the bat. Like if somebody comes in with an ACL repair, they just automatically go for it. They know the approach. Whereas a new grad or someone who's just starting has to think about it. They're like, okay, they go over the check marks in their head, and that is normal and that is natural. But with the reps, with practice, you get to that flow, that autonomous stage. And I think that's just can be generalized to everyday life too.
In any skill acquisition.
Any skill acquisition. Yes.
That's incredibly interesting because we know as we learn a skill, especially a new skill, there's always a curve. Mm-hmm. And whenever we start to understand what we need to do in the beginning, in the first stage, but we can't do it yet.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us an idea of where the gaps are. And it also gives us a perception, a skew perception
Yes.
of where our skill is, which tends to be higher than where it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And as we start to get more experience, and as we start to get more control on the information, on the skill, which still we need to put a lot more energy into actually performing, but we get performing. There's also a skew view on our perception of where we are, because now that the more we know what we don't know.
Yes.
And that gives us a skew view of where our skill is, which a lot of times is lower than where it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I've been trying to wrap my head around in terms of imposter syndrome, because I have the opportunity to coach people, and that is probably one of the most common themes when it comes to the realm of performance.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely.
Have you experienced this, not just yourself, but have you seen it in your colleagues too?
Oh, 100%.
And
oh yeah.
And what are some tips that you think we could use to overcome this annoying feeling of imposter syndrome?
Well, identifying the gaps, like you said, is key, because originally you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But now you see, okay, these are things I can work on. So step one, take a deep breath. Step back, be as objective as you can about it. Because once you realize that you still kind of have some improvements, some things you can work on, it gets a little overwhelming. You think, oh, I have to do this. Take a step back, take a deep breath, prioritize, and put in the reps. Whether that's studying, whether that's practicing, whether that's verbalizing, externalizing, writing. Take a step back, identify what you need to work on, and just work on it. Because the more you work on it, the more it's going to come. That's where neuroplasticity comes in, which is just a fancy way for saying your nervous system cells make new connections and they talk to each other. When you put in the reps, those connections get stronger and there's more of them, which is why it comes so much more naturally.
So the more times that we practice a skill, the more in control we will be, which will mean we will feel less imposter syndrome. So actually, whenever we feel that, all there is we just need to put the reps.
Yes.
We just need to put the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what's so frustrating because we understand that, but our brain plays tricks on us. So what I found has helped me, and I don't know if you agree with this, is trying to detach emotion. Because that is one of the biggest barriers that we have. And we are emotional human beings, right? All of us. So I learned the more I was able to detach emotions and just look at the facts, like you mentioned. Okay, if I'm going to go from point A to point B, what is the gap? And a lot of times, it's time. It's just time and acknowledging the fact that in the beginning, we're not going to be very good. And I think that's what's most frustrating for people, not being good in the early stages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And like, for example, when I was studying for my boards, we have these massive textbooks, these prep books that have 1,100 pages each. And you look and you're like, this is so much information. And time is a massive factor. So taking a step back, removing that overwhelming component, which is a lot harder than it sounds, which is why I say, take a deep breath, reassure yourself that this is normal, this is natural, what you're feeling is valid, and you can overcome it. And with that time factor, you're going to have to prioritize what's most important and what can help you achieve your goal and get you to where you want to be in the most efficient time possible. Because yes, you do need to put in those reps, but when you have 2,000 pages worth of PT information just throwing at you, you need to figure it out. But the thing is, if you can prioritize well, you can make connections, you can draw conclusions, and you can figure out the stuff that's also buried in there without having to like really review it and study it and put in those reps.
And patience is probably key in this realm, in the realm of any skill acquisition.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely, yes.
And then once we understand that, and we understand all these concepts that we've been talking about, we can quickly bring it back to the beginning of our conversation, right? In the realm of coaching, in the realm of neuroplasticity too.
Yes.
And how through repetition, we don't only get better, our participants, the people that we coach, get better. And by using patience and giving them time to try the skill, as opposed to expect everybody to do it right the first time. We know we're not going to do it so good ourselves the first time. How can we expect somebody else to do it the first time? So I think the parallel is there, and it's just putting it all together back to the fact that 1, we're not going to be good in the first couple of reps. 2, we're going to need a lot of reps to do it. And 3, patience is going to be a key component in going from point A to point B.
Right.
And applying that to our coaching. That is brilliant.
Yeah, neuro is wild, absolutely wild. I love it.
Yes.
But yes, absolutely.
Marisa, thank you so much for sharing all this amazing information with us. Where can people find you? Because there's so, we can talk about hours again, just about one topic, right?
Yeah.
But where can people find you in the socials, in the world?
So I have an Instagram. It's MC Valenti 95. And I'm assuming you'll tag me in this, or I'm not hard to find.
I'm gonna put it right here like magic. It's the Instagram.
Just put it right in there. Yeah. I do have a TikTok with, I think it's just Marisa Valenti 3.
You're in the tickety talkies?
Yes, I am. But my tickety talkie is a little different. I'm a rock climber in my free time as well. So there's some climbing videos on there, but I do have some instructional videos on how to improve your climb, because most of my followers are climbers, which goes back to the learning and skill acquisition and performance. You want to work on movements in the gym that you can generalize to the wall. And that's just one example of what we've talked about today. I think that's mainly it. Yeah, I have a LinkedIn, but I don't really
have one.
So
yeah.
it's there.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.